All right. Hello, in-person friends. I'm Jackie Atzinger. I think most of y'all know me. You all definitely do. But I work in advising and career services. I'm one of our advisors, and I kind of help make the Major in Career Series curriculum. So that's how I've ended up in this position, doing the training with you guys. So moving right in, if you are a new instructor, the Max Series is curriculum, just like I just said, that's designed by first-year courses and the Office of Advising and Career Services that gives students the opportunity to learn about themselves through assessments, which we'll talk about in more detail in a few minutes, research majors and careers using reliable resources, so getting good, trusted information, and then learning how to think critically about the information that they've gathered and connecting it to making their major and or career decision. This is a little brief overview of what the Max series looks like. So if you've taught GSD 101 before, you're going to be looking around missing something, and personality is no longer in the Max series. So we've taken that chunk out to focus more on looking at majors that EKU offers for the careers that students are interested in and fitting time in again for that major expo piece once again.
And then if I could interject.
Jump in whenever you want to.
A couple of things while we're on this slide. For our in-person people, we provided 2 stacks of documents to everybody. The first is the bigger one, I should say, the one that has, it says career matches in the top right. That one is kind of the default. These are all the assignments that are found in Canvas. Here's a blank copy of them, and if you want to make copies, or if your office is maybe has paper shortage or whatever, we can make copies for you. And we sent that out as an email last week. And if you need help with that, we can help you with that. The second stack with only 3 papers in it are optional activities. What can happen sometimes within the Max series, and Jackie will talk about this here in a minute for sure, is that you may, depending on what days you teach and depending on how fast you go through content, you just may have some extra time, especially with the assessments. And so those activities follow the assessments on Pathway U. The first is I won't stand for, or the first is the interest one with problem solving, where we're kind of given the situation, they problem solve through it. The second one is an I won't stand for, where on the one side is a statements and stuff of what they will do in specific careers. And on the other side, we'll kind of talk a little bit about how to handle that here in just a moment, but they do something with those statements. And then the last one is like a Mad Libs for workplace preferences. For my online people, both of these things exist as a PDF version in our resources on our website under the Max Series folder. They're just PDFs, and they have all these papers in both of them. The only one that is included in the activities one that is not for the in-person people is when I made the PDF, I included personality at the time way back when, but we are taking out personality, but just know that there was a activity with personality that you can still utilize. It's kind of like a chalk outline person. It's kind of fun. Our students really liked it when we tried it out, but again, personality is not on the overview. So just a heads up there that I didn't include it in the printouts for today. And the other thing I want to mention for my in-person people is that I gave this very similar training to our first-year leaders last week, our new ones who've never seen the Max series. And I provided them copies with the sole purpose of, if as we go through today, and as Jackie shows you all the things in the Max series today, you can utilize this paper as in any way you need, whether you want to just make notes on it of like, wow, I want my students to do this here or that here, or a lot of the students that were first year leaders last week, they actually just did the Max series as we went along. Like they just okay, I'm going to fill it all out like I am a student. And that we have found is actually really, really helpful. For a lot of it, you get to see how it plays out. You can see all the oh, I had a little bit of trouble with this part, identifying where this was. So I'm definitely going to tell my students where this is, because I even had a little bit of trouble. You know what I mean? So at the bare minimum, I would encourage you to take notes on the paper, but I would more highly recommend maybe just completing the thing as we're in here today. Yeah. So, okay. Sorry. I just took the spotlight for a second.
You are fine. Okay. So I broke this training down by days. So if you have the Canvas shell pulled up for GSD 101, in that instructor hub under your modules, Once you click in there, I might actually walk you guys. Okay. I'm used to Alex's computer, so bear with me. Okay, so GSD 101, and you go to your modules. And then as you scroll to the very bottom, I use the instructor hub, but if you don't know where it's at, it's down here at the bottom. And then it's going to be this instructor resource website. And then you'll click the link. Once you are in here, there's this handy little Mac Series resources folder. And everything can be found in here. But pertaining to what I just said a moment ago, I built this training off of the proposed schedule. So I say proposed because you absolutely do not have to follow this perfectly. But that is how I broke the training down by class 1, class 2, so on and so forth. Because that's just what made sense in my brain. So if you kind of get lost, this is a good way to kind of get back on track with what I'm covering.
Can I say something about the calendar real quick too?
Always.
Okay, so and if you could go back to the schedule real quick. So for my Monday, Wednesday, Friday people, there are a couple spaces here where it's empty, right? And this is kind of what I was mentioning earlier with those activities. Like if you're a Monday, Wednesday, Friday person, you may find that I want to space maybe some of this, have some of this extra time throughout to maybe do these activities somewhere. But I will say, the big thing to keep in mind is this major expo that happens on the 30th from 1 to 4 p.m. on the second floor of PAD that every student in your class has to attend. This is going to become very key here in just a second when Jackie kind of plans it all out as an anchor for a lot of the assignments. We want to make sure that our students get to a certain point before we hit the expo. Jackie's going to show that point here in a moment, but I really just want to show kind of like how Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you have some extra time here. So just a heads up, and then also for everyone, this October 30th date from 1 to 4 p.m., second floor PAL for all your students. That is an anchor for all. So that's okay. Jackie.
Yep. Okay, so for class 1, for our Monday, Wednesday, Friday sections, you're going to be introducing the Mac series, kind of describing what it is, how it's been designed, if you so choose, and what it's going to help your students to do. So the overarching goal with the Mac series isn't necessarily for them to make a hard and fast decision. The overarching goal is to expose them to tons of careers so that they can feel better equipped to make a well-informed decision about their major and or career. So the goal here is to narrow things down, not necessarily hammer in a decision. So if students get through this and they're still panicking, that's okay. We'll kind of cross that bridge as we get to it. But some students can feel very overwhelmed by thinking about a career because it is such a long-term, huge goal and decision that they're making. So if you do have those sorts of friends in your classes, encourage them, of course, as I know you all will do, not to panic or freak out, but this will help them at least learn about how to research careers using reliable resources, if nothing else. The next thing that you're going to want to do during day 1 is to give them the pre-test. So the pre-test is going to be a slate form in which they are identifying how clear or unclear they are in terms of making a major and or career decision. So the pre-test, I've copied and pasted it right into this screen here. So they have the choice to be a 1, which means they are completely decided on both a major and a career. 2, if they have decided on a specific major, but maybe don't know how they want to utilize it as a career. Or number 3, opposite of that, they've decided on a career, but aren't sure what major is going to get them there. 4, deciding on one generic field, but not a specific major or career. And then 5, being not decided on a field, major, or career, being very open or deciding between a lot of options. And then there's also now a new additional question about essential employability skills as well. One tip here is so if you've looked at modules 9 through 12, It's a lot of stuff that are in there because this is covering 3 to 4 weeks of class time. So everything is in there. If you go into modules 9 through 12 and you publish everything and make it all available, it can be a little bit overwhelming to some students. So depending on what your class is like and how you know your students operates, I tend to suggest hiding everything and then opening it as you come to it. It makes it a little bit more digestible. Also in modules 9 through 12, there are chapter readings too. It's one big assignment of 4 chapter slides. So know that is sneaking around in there, and not to let them forget about it. But if you would like to, that might be a tip that you might want to take, is hiding everything until you come to it. Makes it a little bit more digestible for them. You'll also want to take the time during class 1 of the MAC series to introduce them to the My Career Journey presentation. Some students, as we know, don't love to give presentations, so I like to tell them as early as I can about the presentation. That way they can kind of get it in the back of their heads. I have told instructors during this training the last couple of semesters that I like to tell them that this is maybe a little bit more of an informal presentation that they're going to be giving, and that it's all about themselves, what they've learned about themselves during the MAC series. There is a slide, as can be seen on the screen here, for each part of the MAC series that they are going to be tailoring to themselves. So there is a blank Google slide template that's provided to them in the MAC series. They are highly encouraged to customize it because we have had some blank plain white ones turned in. So do encourage them to customize it and make it interesting. But I do tell my students personally that this is kind of informal because I want to get them used to presenting in front of classmates or peers, because they're going to have to do that at some point during undergrad, especially post-grad if they decide to go to a graduate program. But it's going to be a skill that they need to learn how to do. You can tie it back to the essential employability skills as well. I've done it a couple different ways in the past. I've done it to where we've met on finals week and knocked it all out during that 2 hour window, to where it makes it even lower stakes. It's like a 3 minute presentation for everybody. Last year, I had my group vote on if they wanted to do that or meet the week before twice and do a little bit of a longer presentation. It was only like 5-ish minutes, but they opted to do that instead. So however you want to tailor it to your students is perfectly fine, but there is a template provided for you all. It's very straightforward. There's going to be a slide for each part of the MAC series. So everything that is listed there, their interests, values, workplace preferences, career matches, major investigation, all of those things. And they'll just go in and put their results on there and then make it look nice and presentable.
And what I will say too, real quick, about the slides is that, like Jackie was saying, there's a lot of ways to present them. Personally, one of the ways that I have had my students present it is in small groups, and they take turns within the small groups because a lot of students have anxieties about it. What the other thing we've seen a lot of is that students will be saying that they're absent during the day, that they cannot present, or something along those lines, especially if it's not finals week. You are more than welcome to tell your students that they need to record their own presentation of them giving it and then submit that to Canvas. That is a very common thing that we as instructors offer to our students. Or they can come in during your office hours and just present to you. But just know that you are open to requesting those things. Those things are normal to request. And then the last is that one of the other things that we've noticed a lot of instructors do is that whenever, for instance, you get to career matches in one class period, you're talking all class period about career matches and doing the work and doing the worksheet and doing everything about it, you then can maybe even carve out 10 minutes of class time to say, this is the class time we are dedicating for you to go to your presentation to work on the career matches slide. That is my expectation for you right now for these 10 minutes. Do that right now. And that is something that a lot of our instructors have done to kind of like help students ease into finishing the entire presentation.
Okay, so class 1 for Tuesday, Thursday is pretty much a copy and paste of Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So even though that looks like a lot of information, it's all still the intro of the MAC series, giving them the pre-test, and telling them about the My Career Journey presentation. The other bit that you all will do in addition to that stuff is making their Pathway U account. Their Pathway U account creation should take maybe maybe 5 minutes at max. There's no like information gathering on it like there used to be if you've taught this before. So all they have to do is go to eku.pathwayu.com. I always tell my students to use their EKU email address. So have your students also do the same thing. If they accidentally put in their personal email, it will still give them access. So again, no reason to panic or anything like that. But as always with anything EKU related, using their EKU student email is going to be most friendly. You can have them jot down their password somewhere. I've learned from my students this semester that they use the password, what's it called? Blank or whatever it's called. Yeah, and then they'll figure out what their password is, and then you are trying to progress with the Mac series, and they're lost in the sauce in the background somewhere. So maybe encourage them to write down their password. But there are step-by-step instructions in that instructor hub under the Mac series resources folder on how to create their Pathway U account. It is very straightforward. I'll pull up the step-by-step just in case anybody needs it.
Just to be clear, it is not behind SSO, so they do have to have their password either saved on their computer or saved somewhere. So that can be a little confusing for them because sometimes they.
Yes, it's not behind single sign-on, just in case anybody didn't hear that. So they do need to take note of their password because it won't have them authenticate or anything like that. But this is what it's going to look like for students. And if you've never seen what Pathway U looks like, this is exactly what it's going to give them. So they'll go to that link, they'll click join now. A lot of them do try to just automatically start typing in their email and their password because they're used to having everything connected to their student account, but they do have to make one. So make sure that they're clicking the join now. They'll enter in their first name, last name, their school email, and then for the little zip code portion, they can either put Richmond zip code of 40475. They can put their home zip code if they would like to. Ultimately, this doesn't matter a whole lot at this time. Pathway U is working in the future to be able to create job opportunities based off of zip code. So right now it has no bearing on anything. If you want to share that information with them, you can, but it's not going to impact anything at all. And then they will create their password and they'll click find your calling here. Once they have made their or clicked find your calling, they can enter in a secondary email address if they want to, or they can press skip for now. Moving along after that, they will be presented with the My Journey screen. So I then direct my students to click assessments at the top of the screen, and it will automatically have them take that interest assessment first before they can do anything else. So they'll press start assessment. Whoops. They'll run through the questions, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit more detail in a moment. And they'll want to answer all questions, press this little finish button here, and it will give them their results. So let me go back to the presentation.
Does that look good on a cell phone too?
Oh, that's a good
I
question.
feel like the interest one is tough, just because it's the liker, but it's just the smiley faces, which is hard. It's not my favorite.
Right.
But, I would recommend them do it on the laptop. I think they can technically, the card sorting.
That would be very
was
difficult to
not
do.
the phone,
Yeah.
Okay.
The question, by the way, just because the microphones are weird, is all Pathway U accessible on another device like a phone other than a laptop? And it was yes and no. Some things are good, some things are bad, and we would recommend a laptop for sure. And then the other thing I'll mention real quick is that, like we said earlier, if you've not ever messed with Pathway U as an instructor, I would encourage you to actually go to Pathway U right now in those like instructions and make an account and just go ahead and you can even start to fill it out like you can take it as a student. You have access to it as well. And one of the ways to learn and to show our students is to do it ourselves first and then see how it works.
It's pretty user friendly. I use this a lot in my day-to-day job, but also having used it in GSD 101, students don't typically have a whole lot of issues with it, but of course, if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me, Alex, first year courses. But it tends to be pretty student friendly. It's pretty modern looking. Okay, so first, the interest assessment. before you actually say, hey, go ahead and do this, I highly recommend kind of explaining the interest assessment, because out of all the assessments in Pathway U, it's what I call the odd one out, because it will show them a lot of random activities and ask them to rate them on a Likert scale from strongly dislike to strongly like. For example, if you aren't looking in there right now, the very first one is build kitchen cabinets. And it kind of progresses. One of them's use a calculator. They're a little bit out there. But the point behind this, not getting into theory too much, but it relates to Tom Holland's type code. So it's trying to figure out what their general occupational themes or interest code is. So it is coming from somewhere. It just seems a little bit odd. So before they take this, I always take the time to stress to them to really, really try very hard not to focus on how much money they can make doing something, just simply how much they would like doing something as a part of a job. That tends to get the most accurate results for them, because this will play a big role in the careers that it gives them for their results. So really trying to not think about money, just if they like doing something or not. And then this one does end on that smiley face page, like in the step-by-step instruction for your Pathway U creation. They'll click finish, and then it will spit out their primary interest, and then their supporting one will be right below that in their results. So definitely, if you haven't looked at the Pathway U before and you're in there clicking around and taking it, you'll see what that looks like in the results tab. Also, during this class time for Tuesday, Thursday, they'll want to knock out their other two assessments in Pathway U. So the first one's going to be values. I always take the time to explain to my students that values are things that are very, very important to us. We all know that, but just in case, reiterate that to them. Values and workplace preferences are going to be card sort activities. So it's going to show them for values, 20 values, and it's going to have them choose their 4 least important first. So things that they really don't care to have at all or can give or take. After that, it will have them choose their top 4 most important, and then it will work backwards from there with their 5 through 8 and then their 9 through 12. I do always make sure when using this software with students to tell them, even though it says on the screen, you are choosing your bottom 4 least important first. Because a lot of times they'll choose their top 4 first. They can always go back and change it if they do that, but that will skew their results to be inaccurate if they do accidentally make that mistake. So I always make sure to point that out to them. Sometimes students have said they have a hard time choosing between these things, because as they're looking over them, they're like, well, I would like to have all of these things in a career. I always tell my students, if you feel like that's you, that's perfectly fine. Just try to rank them against one another. That usually gives them a little bit of clarity moving forward and what to select. And then the workplace preferences assessment, I explained this one as being like your values, but only in relation to a work environment that you are in, or a company or organization that you are employed by, and what things you want them to exemplify and what they expect you to kind of stand for as well. So this one's a little bit more of a two-way street. It's also a card sort activity. Students typically will struggle to make decisions with this one more so than the values assessment. It also shows them more. I think it shows them 24 workplace preferences and has them choose more. So it will again have them choose their bottom 4 least important first. Then we'll have them choose their top 4 most important. And then it has them choose their 5 through 11 and then their 12 through 18, I believe, or 12 through 20. But it has them choose a little bit more as well. All of these things, though, should probably take 20-ish minutes, maybe. It depends on how deeply they're really thinking about it, to be honest with you. And then, of course, as we kind of already said, you can have them open their empty Google Slides in a different tab, or however they want to operate, add that information in there. Once they are done taking their assessments, let me click forward really quickly. Okay, once they're done taking their assessments, there will be on their results page a little print icon near the upper right corner of the screen. They can choose that print icon and choose save to PDF, and that's what they want to upload to their assignment in back in Canvas. So that, okay. Let me go here.
There are also, while Jackie's pulling that up, there's also a video attached to that assignment to show how to print to PDF. just in case.
Okay, yep, and then here's the assignment. And it's worth a lot of points. We got 60 points here. But they can upload that PDF result. I know my students have gotten somewhat used to taking a screenshot. So however you need to get their results to them, the PDF is going to be the way that it tells in the assignment. But as we know, working with students, sometimes they don't know how to do the things like saving to PDF and stuff like that. So however you want to tweak that, you are more than welcome to tweak that. And then, do you think your pathway you signed in?
Should like auto sign.
Let's see.
I think so. Yeah, you just have to log in.
So looking at your assessment results, once you've done all the things, it will give them this overview of all of their results. And this is what they can save as a PDF. So they can click download, or they can do print, save to PDF, and then they'll upload it to Canvas from their files. Okay, any questions, comments, concerns about class 1 so far? Anything that I missed?
I will say, like, some of our students are assessment averse. So they might be like, oh, why am I doing this? We do some things to help them later on kind of self-verify. So if you have a student that's like, oh my gosh, I'm not realistic or something out of the box, like, just tell them this is just our starting point so we can use some of these software. We're gonna have lots of things where we go in and help you look more at you, but we have to start on some things. Like, some of your students are gonna be like, oh my gosh, why do I know everything about myself, or my values aren't that, like, all of this, there are times where they're gonna respond that way, but we really want them to try to look at this because it is all scientifically proven things. And I know in some of their other classes, psychology is doing a big assessment thing for them this year. So they may have some ideas, but just make sure you assure them that this is not putting them in some sort of box. We're gonna help them understand what it means for them to look at different things, because just culturally, some of our students are very averse to assessments, just to put that.
I was telling the first year leaders the other day, because they did the same thing. They took these assessments and they were like, they said, some of this doesn't match up to me. And then when they went to the careers, they're like, some of this doesn't match up to me. And I told the first year leaders, and I tell my class that, I show them mine, and mine's one of my top ones was like a nurse for a long time. I used to take it back in the day. And I was like, that's great because, I'm social, like I want to help people. But Pathway U never asked me if I pass out at the sight of blood, which I do. And so we can get, like, Pathway U is very good, like to Bethany's point, it is awesome. But they also know these little minute things about themselves to then interpret. And there is, like Bethany said, like things later down the line that then interpret even more and make a different decision. So yeah.
If you have somebody that's telling I'm only here to be a computer science major, and they don't score anything in computer science, you tell them when we get to the major and career, they can look at that area. Because there are some of your students that this is gonna be a wake-up call for, on maybe what their actual preferences are versus what their goals. Yeah.
Okay, so moving along in our little calendar proposed schedule, looking at class 2. So for our Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this is when you're going to be creating your Pathway U accounts with your students and then having them take the interest assessment. With Tuesday, Thursday, we are looking at activities at this point because you've already taken the assessments and done all of those things. So at this point, we do have optional activities for you all to use. So for our in-person friends, you all can look at that interest problem solving team activity reflection. That's an option for interest. If you are online, it is in the instructor hub under Mac Series resources as well.
And what I will say while people are looking at that, like we talked about earlier, if for the sake of time, you have to cut something or you don't get to something, you need to cut activities first, because they're from classes that I've taught and that others have taught, some of the times I get into the assessments and we start a really good conversation about like, well, what is workplace preferences? Like, what does that even mean for me? And like, what are values in general? Because they really haven't heard about what values are. And so for the sake of time, if you're like, well, I need to cut something, you need to cut the activities. That is like, because they are optional. They're fun. They're used to like kind of help like your class liven up and stuff. But if you're already getting that from other places, don't need to worry about it.
Yep. So for the values activity, the I won't stand for, I did want to make a note about that because that activity does have them physically stand up at their desk. And if you have a student who has a mobility issue or needs some sort of accommodations of any kind, you can have them raise their hand. There are all different ways that you can change this to accommodate your students in your class, because we all know students have different needs. So please feel free to change that any way that you need to. I did, whenever I made the I won't stand for, I did try to choose some pretty popular majors here, or more of our well-known job titles that students are already familiar with, try to already get them thinking about what their day-to-day might look like, and things that they want to be able to do, don't want to do at all, and just kind of get them thinking. It's a pretty fun activity. It usually only takes like 10-ish minutes. It's not very long at all. I think it really depends on how chatty your class is. So for our courses that are a little bit quieter, that's okay. I had like silence my first year teaching, so that's perfectly fine. But you may get through this in like 5 minutes. For students that have, or for instructors that have chattier courses, it might take a little bit longer and be a little bit more engaging. It really just depends on your students. But when I did this with my class last year, they really enjoyed it. So this is one of my favorite activities with the Max series. But yeah, as Alex said, you can also cut it if you don't have time for it.
Yeah, and on the back of the I won't stand for paper that you all have in person, that's like if you want them to write down something and have a place to put a lot of these statements, that's what that is. So it's like a pyramid where they have the first box, what's important to me, they can put some of those statements that they hear. I always encourage my students, when I get to a statement, you feel really strongly that it's important to you, put it in the box. And then take it or leave it, that middle section, and then wouldn't want in that bottom section. Just so that they kind of have a place where they can use some information for their presentation. Because a lot of times students will get to their presentation, they put not a lot there, or they don't know what to put. And these are perfect for that, because then they can say, per my activity in class, I found out that like these were really important to me with my values. And so, yeah, use this as you see fit for your class. And I use this in spring and had my students like, that I didn't get a lot of participation from them all the time. So I kind of said, you have to be writing while doing this. And it kept them really engaged and thought provoking for sure.
Okay, so now we're starting to kind of separate in class times, just because obviously Monday, Wednesday, Friday meets more frequently than Tuesday, Thursday. So we're looking at class 2 still for Tuesday, Thursday, moving on to class 3 for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And it's just, again, looking at that interest, problem solving, team activity reflection. Here, what students might need help with is a common workplace scenario. So when you look at that little scenario analysis question there, it says to try to research and pick a common scenario that they might find themselves in based on their interests or a career that they're interested in. However you want to tweet, that's fine, but they might need help thinking about things that happen in a job because they most likely haven't worked full-time before. So they really don't have a whole lot to expect or know what to pull from, or they might not think about how people interact at work maybe a little bit differently than they do in their personal free time or in class. So tweak that however you need to. That can kind of go in a lot of different directions, really. Or you can make some scenarios up and have them select. I think there's an example. Is there an example list on here, a
I
scenario?
think I have it somewhere within the Mac.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
Yeah,
too.
I think it's in a Google Doc. Because I think we have like a homework version plus an in-class version. I think it's on.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. And then for our class 4 for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're going to be doing the values activity. You might want to beef it up or maybe combine some class days. You could perhaps take a break and do a reading assignment, however you want to do that, because that's not going to take a whole lot of time. So I'll kind of breeze over this slide because I've already talked about it in depth. This one is really fun. So this is our workplace preferences activity. So class 5 for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, class 3 for Tuesday, Thursday. This is our Mad Libs activity, and this can be as fun and silly as you want it to be, or as serious as you want it to be. So this basically has them, if you've never played Mad Libs before, you go through, it's gonna ask them to describe an environment, give a specific time of the day, yada, yada, yada. You all can read and look at those little prompts there. But again, you can make it as silly and just not give them a whole lot of prompting there and have them just fill it out. And then they're going to write down the words in the corresponding blank on the back side of that. Or you can have them, like, be serious, think about how you want your work environment to be, that sort of thing. Either way, it ends up being fun. And then they kind of go around. Last year, I had my students go around and read what their little Mad Lib blurb was there, and it was just really fun. I thought you could also break them into groups and have them share it with their little group mates. There are all different ways to kind of split this up, but this one was a hit in my class last year.
Yeah, I think the two things I'll say about this one is that the one thing that I did run into that's a problem with this one is that students don't always know, like, where on number 12 it says an adjective. We try to give examples, but with our students, and especially in our AGS students, our Success First population, we need to post a sticker, especially with our students who need a little bit of extra help and guidance, you may have to explain a lot of the blanks and provide a lot of examples. I remember, like I said, the adjective one and purpose of a job, which is number 7, was really hard for them to like nail down and like understand, like, well, what do I even put there? And I'm like, well, some students just put money, like they want to make money, and some students want like morality and, like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all these other things. So just a heads up. But then the other thing I did in my class in the spring that I really liked, and take it or leave it, just an example, is that I had to be really silly, right? I encouraged as much silliness as possible. And then on the second page, after they told their stories to their small group, I then said, I need you to circle the words or the blanks that do not match up to your actual ideal workplace and put what you would put if it was a correct story. So for example, like when I think about my future career, I imagine working in a place that is, and some students put like pool or like a desert or something like that. And I'm like, well, what would it really be? And they're like, kind of cozy. I actually want it to be cozy in there. And I'm like, well, circle it. And you're going to put cozy next to it to say what it actually would be if it was an ideal workplace. So just ideas to kind of like spruce it up, use some time, stuff like that.
Yeah. I also think workplace preferences is one that I really try to lead a lot of discussion in my class in, because I know myself as a student, I had no idea what I really wanted my work environment to be like, because I hadn't worked full time. Like, I had a lot of part-time jobs, but I didn't really think about what I wanted to get up and be surrounded in every single day, or how I wanted my coworkers to be, or just different things like that. And so I also usually take the time during this day to ask my students that do have work experience to share their likes and dislikes about their work environment. And it's really cool to see, because some students will be like, well, I'm sitting at a desk all day at my job. And then somebody else is like, well, I'm up and I work at the rec, so I'm up and moving all day. And then they can kind of be like, well, I would like that. I don't want to be as sedentary, or whatever it is, kind of harking back to the cozy feelings and things of that nature. Because a lot of times students don't think about what their day-to-day is going to look like. And I think that is a really important factor when thinking long-term about career and job satisfaction. So I think kind of relating that as well, or just providing them with any insight you have, can really be invaluable at this time as well. Okay, so moving into our worksheets at this point, the first one up is going to be your Explore Career Matches worksheet. So we're looking at day 6 for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, day 4 for Tuesday, Thursday, again for the proposed schedule. Most of these worksheets are going to have the exact steps they need to take to find that information, especially for our Z sections, to try to help them out. But this is where earlier Alex said, if you're not familiar with Pathway U, you might want to log in, create an account, take the things, kind of see where you need to click. I highly recommend taking some time to click through the places that you're going to have to look through in the worksheets. None of this is difficult, but you do have to do some clicking around. And most of the time, as we know, students can't find it on that first click. They tend to panic. So really just being able to step in and say, oh, you clicked in the wrong place. You're going to click here, or, oh, you got one more click to do. that's going to be kind of the general theme for all of these worksheets. Even though it's right in front of them, it might be useful to kind of click through it ahead of time. But first here, so for your career matches and all of the worksheets moving forward, I've included in a statement like provide printed copies. Some of them are Google Docs. If you want to use it as a Google Doc, you can and do it that way if your students have gotten used to that. However you want to go about it, as usual, is perfectly fine. Students will pull their answers for this worksheet from their Pathway U account or where they uploaded that PDF of their their results. They say outcomes, but their results. Either way will work, but they'll need to kind of have it on hand because as you can see, the first thing this worksheet is going to have them do is list their top results for all of their assessments. So they will be looking at their primary interest. They'll list their top 3 there, their primary values, and their first value under other values. So values can be a little bit odd in the way that it spits out their assessment results. It'll do it one of 2 ways. It'll have their top 2 values, and then a little bit down below, they'll pull their top third, or it could have their primary values list 2, and then just a little bit down, it'll have their third. It'll show up one of 2 ways. Either way, they'll still have a full game of results to pull from. And then they'll, of course, want to list their top ones and then their top 3 workplace preferences as well. So from this list, because this is something that I got questions from my students about and other instructors about. So looking at that bottom chunk, their top 6 priorities ranked, they will be pulling those top 6 priorities from those top 3 boxes. So they will have 9 things to narrow down to 6 in that bottom part.
I will say too, the one thing that comes up for a lot of students is something they tied in like one of the categories, like if, hey, I know my first 2, but all the other ones are tied, and we encourage them to pick out of the categories there. The other one is that one of these, and I think it may, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe workplace preferences, that some students may get nothing, like they may see like a couple bars that are filled, but then the other bars are just not filled in at all. And that's another place to encourage them to click into those sections to say, well, what one would be your third if something was filled in? Because I can't remember if it's workplace
I
preferences.
think it might be interest.
Yeah, it's one of them where sometimes the bar just doesn't fill in, like with any results, or like maybe 1 or 2. Sometimes what I noticed in the spring, which I haven't told you about this yet, so this is news to maybe both. What I noticed in the spring was that was happening when a student was like, I just don't want to work. They're like, I just want to live
Real.
and not work ever. Yeah, right? And not work ever and just live my life. And then their results were not populating because they're like, yeah, I don't want to do any of this. And so that if you have a student who's freaking out because they're looking at other screens and everybody's got it figured out and their screen looks a little bit different, just encourage them, hey, you could obviously take it again if you want to, or click into them and see which ones you would vibe with if you can read through it all.
And if you don't have time, because like we keep kind of talking about just because it is easier once you've actually seen what this stuff looks like. But if you don't have time to take all the assessments, if you just take interests, your stuff will populate. So just for you guys to know, or if you have a student that is barely hanging on to life and you're just trying to get them to some career matches or something, they have to take interest for things to populate. But of course we want to take more than interest. But if you are just kind of practicing and you don't want to do all the assessments, if you just do interest, you'll get all the same stuff that you're going to see.
Yeah. Also, if you're just practicing too, mine looks crazy. My results have changed so much where I made so many different tutorials. You can go through and just select a bunch of stuff and it'll generate results for you if you just don't want to answer it.
Yeah.
On their top 6 priorities, I do kind of stress the importance of them thinking about which are most important to them once they do narrow it down and rank them in order of importance. Now, if you have a student that's like, well, all these things are equally important, don't fight with them, as we all know, it's fine. If they are all equal, that's fine. But it does really get them thinking about what things they really do need to have met, what priorities they need to have met by a job or a career to be satisfied. I always say long-term. You obviously don't have to say that or any of that, but that's why I kind of think it's important for them to rank it so they can start to think about, okay, these things are important to me, but then even a step further than that, what's like extremely important to me, things that I do not want to have to compromise on at all. And that could be any of those results that they put on there, just depending on student achievement. Okay. Now, on the second page of their Explore Career Matches, it has them to actually start learning a little bit about their career matches. So it gives them the steps and where to click. But like we said, if you're not familiar with it, it might be useful to click through Pathway U to find this stuff. None of it is difficult. It's just kind of knowing where to click at. But they are actually going to be looking at their career results. I instruct them to click on careers near the top of the page. And then what it will do, and I'll pull this up in just a second. Pathway U breaks down careers by subject area. So what is a common issue here is students just writing the subject area and not clicking on view careers. So I'll show you what that looks like because this is something that happens a lot.
You can't judge my careers. No judgment, judgment
Yeah.
free zone, right?
No judgment here on Alex's results.
I don't agree. I'm ready to do it.
Mine are skewed all over
My,
the place.
my bottom one is like finance and marketing and it's all, I think it is just.
All bad.
Yeah.
So as we can see here, here are our subject areas. They do have to click on view careers, and you might even lightly word it as, I know this seems silly, but you do have to click view careers because this is a common issue. And the problem here is that they're not learning about their careers, right? That's the whole point of this. So that's why it's important to point that out, even though it might seem a little bit silly because it does happen and then they're not going to get the good information. So once they click on view careers, this is where they actually start to see all kinds of different career titles, and it tells them how strong the match is and all that fun stuff. But this is where they actually pull stuff, and then they'll press back and they can go into their next subject area. They'll have to again click view careers. So taking that, make sure they're taking that step.
And Jackie, for a question for you.
Yes,
On the last page you're at where you view all the different subject areas.
yes.
Do you ever have them just click view all careers, that button in the top right at all? Or would you recommend that, or do you recommend one view or another?
I usually would do probably view by subject area because view all is just going to be a little bit overwhelming because I can't, well, maybe you all, yeah, you all can see how teeny tiny that scroll is. Sorry, up here, that little scroll indicator. They're probably going to look at that. I know my students are going to be like, I'm not doing that. I'm not scrolling through all that stuff. So I think that viewing by subject area is a little bit more digestible. But to each their own. This is one area though, once they are getting to where they're favoriting things, if you do choose to have your students do that, I'll take it back to subject area just to show you. So over here on the left where it says using career matches, this will change once they click view all careers. And they will be able to filter by different stuff here. And there's that favorite career so they can go back to later on for a different assignment. But one might just be a little bit more friendly looking than the other. Okay, let me go back to this. And so they'll click careers, view careers. So they only, for the assignment, they just have to choose 6 careers that they are interested in to list in this portion. I always tell my students that they can list however many careers that they want to. Some of my students know what they want to do. So I tell them, if you have a student who's sitting in front of you and they're like, nope, I know that I'm going to be a nurse. That's it for me. I'm not interested in anything else. I'm not doing anything else. I always tell them, okay, well, why don't you just choose 2 other careers? Maybe if worse comes to worse and you need a backup plan. I talk to my students pretty frankly, so I'll tell them like, hey, maybe plan A doesn't work out. You need to have a plan B. You need to have something that you're familiar with. Or if you have someone though that is stonewalling you and they're going to be blank, just tell them to choose 2 more that sound interesting to them. They can use to learn about for the rest of this stuff. And then down here, let's see. Okay, so at the bottom of this worksheet, put this back into present mode. it will ask them to connect their career that they've selected back to their priorities. So they'll flip over back to the front page and just kind of see how their top 6 priorities connect to their career. And then under that, they will then go through a process of elimination after answering their reflection question here and narrow it down to 3 careers from their initial 6 or however many. So these are going to be their top 3 careers that they are very interested in at this point that they want to learn more about, because the next worksheet will have them really take a deep dive into those things. So just another tip here, having them favorite those top 3 careers. So after they narrow it down, obviously if they want to favorite more or not favorite at all, we can't make them do these things, but it's suggested that way. It's just easy for them to find for their next worksheet. This would be particularly helpful for the Monday, Wednesday, Friday sections. For Tuesday, Thursday, you're going to move right into the next worksheet. So it won't really play as big of a role, but for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, having them favorite it might be a little bit more helpful for you guys. Okay. So moving into our next worksheet, we are looking at day 7 for our Monday, Wednesday, Friday sections, and then our day 4 for Tuesday, Thursday section. And this is a new worksheet that we have created, a new portion of the math series to have them actually look at majors at EKU and to learn how to take a look at the catalog and what they're going to be getting themselves into and all that sort of fun stuff. So as you look at this worksheet, this is pretty text heavy here, but we've got the worksheet itself is step-by-step instructions on what for them to click. Now, this is one that if you are not familiar with the catalog, I do highly recommend clicking around in it. I will say, since it's been updated this year, it's friendlier, I think, and a little bit easier to navigate. But essentially, they are going to be listing their top 3 careers that they are interested in that first little blank. It's over 3 pages, so they can list one on the first page. Then you're going to see 2 duplicate pages. They're going to run through the same steps for their other 2 careers. So on one page, they'll list one career, next page, their second favorite career, third page, third favorite career. And then it will walk them through how to find this information. So I'll click through the catalog pretty quickly.
And while Jackie's getting that up, that screenshot that's on the screen is a little bit of an older version of this worksheet. So just a heads up that the worksheet you all have is more like boxes and stuff like that. It looks a little bit more like grid-like, just to kind of help organize and stuff.
And I know you may be like, oh, I don't need to know what college things are in. The reason we want students to know is because when they go to the major expo, that's how everything's broken down. So then they're not like, oh, wait, I'm looking for the College of STEM because I'm interested in medical lab science. Nope, that one's in health sciences. We'll still help them get to all these things, but we're trying to give them some of that foundational knowledge. It's okay if you don't know either. At any given point, they might change them.
Yeah. So here's the updated one. My apologies on that oversight. But it'll have, again, it's going to look pretty much the same. But it will tell them to go to the catalog. So for my class, I have been really harping on them to open a new tab for stuff this semester. And kind of learning how to bot back and forth between that. I have learned by teaching GSD, I used to do a lot of assuming of what students knew to do. Now I don't do that anymore. So I have been working with them on opening a new tab and bopping back and forth between the 2 of them. This is going to be helpful here for them. So it does instruct them to open a new tab and go to the catalog. The easiest way for them to find it is going to be clicking on programs A to Z. And then they're pretty much going to be clicking on whatever letter that their major falls into. If they don't know what major is good for their career, they can pull that information from Pathway U. So if we go to, let's do, see what's that for audiology. They can pull that from clicking on this little programs information here, and this will list majors that EKU offers that is good for that career. This will look different depending on what career they've clicked on. So some of these will list several majors, while others, as we know, are more specific. For a nursing degree, you're going to do to become a nurse, you're going to get a nursing degree. So that's pretty much the only option there. But for others, you've got a couple different options, so they can kind of pick whichever one sounds most interesting to them, whichever one they think is most doable, kind of within their wheelhouse, whatever it might be, perfectly fine to kind of fill in the blank there. And then as we select, we'll go to communications, not communication, communication disorders.
This confused thing on the
Yeah.
application as well.
The important thing here for students, when you are directing them to the catalog, and it says it on the worksheet, but make sure that they choose the one that has bachelor in it. I know that's glaringly obvious to us, but we want to make sure that we're directing them to the right thing, not accidentally having them click on a master's program, doctorate, a certification, whatever it might be. So make sure they are finding that word bachelor, and remind them to do that. Once they are inside of here, they will click on program requirements. This might not be a necessary step for all majors or programs on campus. So I think that is noted on the worksheet, but they'll click on program requirements. And towards the left, I'm gonna kind of bounce over here for a second. On the left, once they have found their program or their major, they can find their college here under this little collapsible menu. So that's how they know what to select on their worksheet. So here we've got College of Ed and Applied Human Sciences. So over here, they could go ahead and check that box. Here. And then it'll ask them, does the major have concentrations? Yes or no? If yes, what are offered? They'll list it. How many total hours are required for the major? Every degree is 120 credit hours, so that's a little secret there. The answer is 120. But they'll find that if it has free electives, yes or no. If so, how many? And then we'll get into actually some clicking around over here. So they're going to find all that information from this program's requirement page. And see, here we are. We've got 6 free electives here. So they'll find that line. And we have 120 total credit hours. That'll be the same for everybody. Students, you may have to kind of help them scroll through and decipher where to find those hours and that sort of thing. Because again, it kind of can be a panic if theirs doesn't look like the screen, like the person sitting next to them, they kind of freak out, or at least mine do. So, let's see. Trying to find, let's go to psychology because it has a lot of different concentrations. So I can show you what that looks like.
And if you have a student that's like, I want to like there's 8 different concentrations in psychology, and they're like, I want to look at psychology, behavior disorders, and then I also want to look at child and family. I can't even remember if those are their concentrations anymore. Like, let them do that. Like, if sometimes I think we get overcomplicated, we're like, no, look at something different. If they're taking the time to actually notice that there's multiple conversations or concentrations, like, we just want them to interact and understand some of the different things that are offered.
Yeah. So here, as you can see, it's got concentrations, and then it has all the options listed. And then below there, they can learn about, well, what makes that concentration different from the next? And it'll tell them what classes and how it varies from concentration to concentration. The next question on the worksheet here, or the next prompt is find a few classes that sounds interesting by clicking the hyperlink. So they will click on a class title. It will give them a course description. Now, there is going to be some jargon on some classes more than others, but they will get a course description for every single class that's listed in the catalog. So that's how they can answer that. What classes sound fun, interesting, those sorts of things. And they can actually start to learn what types of classes they're going to be taking towards their major that they are thinking about and actually considering majoring in. And so we've got a fun or exciting question, and then we've got a challenging question, and then just a reflection of, is this a major you can actually see yourself declaring? Why or why not? And then we start the process over again for our second major investigation. Anything? Okay. So again, not overly complicated, just kind of knowing where to click and find and not panic overall. All right, so the next day, rats. So this is just a little embed of the worksheets that go along with, this day here.
But
So-
I've had to talk to IT and CBN. I need IT and CBN to talk to each other and tell them that.
So there are built-in catch-up days if you need to have those for your class. So this, like typically, historically, for any students that have had to miss, if they get sick, I try to really stress the importance of not missing during the MAC series just because it moves so quickly and builds upon, day after day, builds and builds upon each other. So if they miss one day, it can very quickly kind of land them in a pickle because they're going to be behind and missing information and all that fun stuff. So if you find yourself with students that have this issue, there are a couple buffer days built in on that, again, proposed schedule for makeup days, for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday. We're looking at day 8 and day 5. You could also break this up if you want to have them do a chapter reading during class. You could use this break time to kind of get out of the MAC series headspace and do that instead. And then again, there's that major expo, October 30th from 1 to 4 in upstairs PAL. It will be an excused absence for them. I did have some students when I first announced this to them a couple of weeks ago that were like, we have to be there for 3 hours. And I was like, no, please don't do that. Because it can be a little bit overwhelming. So all they need to do when they are at the major expo is give themselves enough time to talk to 3 different majors or programs that they're interested in. So it's kind of a come and go as you will event. So they just need to be able to spend enough time to get that information from them. Now, if they are considering a major that's very big, so maybe something like psychology, it might take them a little bit longer to talk to the representative from that major or program, just because there are a lot of students that are also going to be talking about that. So I would kind of give them that little bit of a clarification, but.
And I think if I could interject, I think the thing that was supposed to be there was the action plan.
Yes.
Can we bring that up real quick? Which is, I think, in the big packet, the last 3 pages. So for when they're at the expo and they're talking to these people, we actually have, and it's towards the bottom there, right above my career journey. We actually have them go and interview, like we've been saying, 3 different majors on campus. And so this is the my action plan is like the packet for the expo. So if they don't have to bring really anything with them besides this packet, they have to have this packet. On this packet, the first kind of section is that 1 through 5 of where am I at right now, because they could have gone through Pathway U in the MAC series so far, and that number could have changed, right? They could have gone from a 5 of I don't know what I'm doing to a 2 of like I think I kind of know now. They could also do the opposite of like I was a 1 and now I don't really know what I'm doing, and that's perfectly fine. The next section just kind of has them reflect on these careers and what we're interested in and all these other things, and then the next section talks about informal interviewing. So students in all of our classes will be going to interview 3 different people. So 3 different tables about the major there. And a lot of our students, I don't know if you have caught onto this, are very introverted nowadays. And they may be really nervous about going to talk to people they've never met before, especially when those people may include deans of a college, because a lot of times the deans of the colleges come and work some of these tables. So on the second page, we provide a list of possible questions that students can start to ask the people at these tables. They include everything from like professional questions to career questions, to everything in between. It's just to get kind of their foot in the door of what to ask these people and what to kind of like start with, and stuff like that. Because students, and we've noticed in the past, have gone up and been like, so what do you do? You know, when they go to the education table. So how much does it pay? Where there's a way to ask that question is just a little bit more tactful. And then the last page of this document is where they will put all this information. So we have college, so what college it's in, right? If we're interviewing education, then that's in CEAHS. department, what department that person is with, who did you interview? So we just need like a name. That way we kind of know what's going on, right? If they're talking to, Pete Edwards in the education department, then I want to see Pete Edwards there, his name there. And then any notes is kind of like the students' notes to themselves, right? If they're talking to Pete and they're learning some really cool things, they want to jot that down there. And then stamp/sticker, every table will have a way to notify on this page that a student has talked to them, whether it is a stamp or a sticker. I know we're still trying to figure out, I don't know if we've decided yet, but it will be one of the two, where after they're done talking to the person, they will then go, can I have a stamp/sticker? And they go, absolutely. And they will give them that in that area. And so by the end of their time at the expo, a student should have that back page filled out with 3 stamp/stickers, with 3 people that they interviewed. One of the things that comes up on expo time and happened a little bit more often last year, and I'm hoping it doesn't happen as often this year, but it may happen, where a student may be really dead set on a major, and that major may not necessarily be working the table at the time that that student is there. We had that instance last year. And if a student, within your class comes up to you and you're at the expo with them and they say, hey, like I tried to go talk to so-and-so major and like no one was working the table, encourage them just to talk to another table that they may be interested in, and that these may not, just for the sake of time and availability, necessarily line up to what they wanted to, but just the fact that they're going out and they're interviewing people and they're talking to the tables and talking to the majors. That's really what we want them to do. We want them to explore those kind of things. We ran into that just a little bit last year, but it was fine. I think we've kind of solved some of that, but just get kind of a heads up if you're with your students on Expo Day and they come up to you and they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? That's something to help them out with. Yeah.
Will there be like a layout, like a where each college is?
Yes. So our office is making that within the next couple of weeks because we're getting tables finalized, and then we take the like the outline of Upper Powell, and then we kind of label where each table is going to go. We label like what rooms and what hallways have what college, what because sometimes and a lot of times, and I think we're even doing this year, we have resources spread out throughout the second floor too, and so we'll have those labeled. And so yeah, we'll be sharing that map with the students, with you all on Expo Day. We'll be handing it out. I think we handed out to every person coming in last year, right? They each got a map.
Was it just the staff?
We asked them to bring it if they could, but I don't think we gave all.
Okay.
Cause I don't think we can.
No, I don't think we did it. I think we gave maybe just staff and faculty the paper.
But we'll be there. We can point them.
It's not difficult.
Yeah, no, I just.
And some of the things that we identified as problems, space wise and noise wise, I think we're shifting a little bit. But also, if you have a student that can't find their major, they can visit those tables.
Yeah.
So like if they're interested in a program that doesn't exist at EKU, like you don't have to be like, oh my God, pick something at EKU. We would want them to maybe pick 2 things at EKU and 1 thing somewhere else, but like we can also kind of we have a table set up for that. We may not have every single answer, but ultimately really what we're trying to do is have them practice having professional conversations and an intro of an elevator pitch. So Oaks table can also talk to them if they can't find, or if they don't even know where to start. Because they did 17 major exploration and they didn't know which ones to turn.
All right, so after the major expo, getting back into class time, looking at day 9 for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, day 6 for Tuesday, Thursday of the MAC series. We're gonna be looking at our career investigation worksheet now. I think, is this the most recent one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect.
It was just
So-
that one where we kind of just
Changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the worksheet they are going to be completing for this. Again, if it's a little bit word heavy or looks like it is, it's because the instructions are on here, but we are going back to Pathway U with this assignment. So students will be pulling answers from their Pathway U account, so they will once again be logging into Pathway U, and they'll be choosing a career that they want to investigate from their favorites list, or they can click on careers and view all careers and search for their career if they didn't favorite it, to answer these questions. Once they click on a career, they will pull 6 job duties from on the job you would section, and I'll show you that in just a second. That can vary greatly from career to career on Pathway U, but they should be able to list at least 6 what they might be doing in a day. Some of them will have like what seems like an endless amount. So if they want to list more, they can, but they need to list at least 6 because they will have at least 6 that they can list. And then going back to that programs page that I quickly looked at with you all a few minutes ago, that's where they are going to pull this information from. So this box will then tie those 10 essential employability skills into that on the job you would be doing. They're going to pick what they think best matches from here to what they would be doing on the job here. And I'll show you quickly. I'm already in it here, but once they go to their careers, let's see, view careers. Here's the on the job you would section. So as you can see, there's a ton of stuff listed here. They will have enough to fill it out. They can even look at more if they want to list at least 6 of those. A lot of my students last year were like, oh my God, I have to write all that down. And I was like, no, you don't, but please do 6 of them. And then look over the rest of them and read them. Okay. So on the back side of this worksheet, part 2, they are going to kind of reflect on the job duties. Does anything challenging to them? Does it sound fun? Does it dissuade them from wanting to do that career? You know, a general reflection question. Then we get into some more clicking. So there is a little clip of the box they're going to be looking for. And again, instructions on how to get there. I'll show you all how to get there. So they will be using this little learn more button in the ONET box on Pathway U to answer the job opportunities are blank in the future question and for the salary question. So moving back over to Pathway U here, this box, it's going to look a smidgen bit different from career to career, but it's going to be on the right side of the screen. And the only reason that it ever looks different is dependent on how many on the job you would. Depending on that length, but it's always going to be on the right side of the screen and it's always going to be the last one that's listed. So it's this want to learn more box here that connects them to ONET, and they will click on learn more. And then they can look at any other of this information that they want to, but for the worksheet specifically, they are going to be working with this job outlook box. And this is where they're going to pull the answer for, here's the statement, new job opportunities are likely in the future. So the student would put likely, and that could be very likely or unlikely or whatever it is. It will tell them that's the word that they want to pull for that fill in the blank question. And then once we get to the salary, this is going to be very easy for them to just jot down, and you can't be standing over them and make sure they're writing down the right number, but this is going to be a national average. And a lot of our students are from Kentucky, want to stay in Kentucky. So we want to try to get them to look at Kentucky because that number is not going to be the same as we all know. So they will click on local salary info here, and then they will select their state from the drop-down menu and click go. And then it will give them the state that they're looking at compared to the rest of the country, and they want to list this middle number here at the bare minimum for the salary question. So going back over to the worksheet, it's going to be your average salary here is what they'll list. So that middle number. This one's not too far off from the national average. Again, You can't stand over every single one of them while they're working on this. If they list the national average, they list the national average. But this is taking it a step further so they can look at the state they want to live in. Some of our students are like, I'm getting the heck out of here, or I'm not from here, I'm going back home. So if they want to look at a different state, they can look as many states on there as they want to. And it could be a good teaching opportunity to say, hey, cost of living, how much you get paid is going to be different because of that, and all that fun stuff, of course. Next worksheet that we're gonna be looking at is the job investigation worksheet. So this is where students usually have a lot of question and maybe a little bit of panic just because they gotta do a little bit of reading and clicking around, and not all job postings look the same, as we all know. But this is going to have them actually look at live job postings so that they can learn what employers actually expected of them in their task, qualification, education, what they might be doing in a day, all that fun stuff. So this one, as you can see, has the step-by-step instructions on how to find the information that they need to answer these questions. So you'll again provide them with a worksheet. If you are to use a Thursday section, they will still be working under that job outlook box, and they'll be clicking on find jobs for this one. And then similar to before with the salary, they will be choosing a state that they are interested in and clicking go. And I'll kind of click through this stuff in a second. But they will be looking at 3 real job postings for a career that they are interested in. Now, students in my section last year wanted to look at a couple different career options. I told them that was fine and said, if you want to look at one job for each career that you're interested in, if they were still kind of up in the air. But for students that are more narrowed down at this point, they can just look at 3 job postings under the same career. And the only reason this becomes a little bit complicated is just because, as we know, all job postings are not the same. Even though the same information is in there, it's not labeled the same. So that tends to stir up the panic. So it's not actual panic. They just think they're panicked. So you might just kind of have to walk around and help them kind of look at, oh, it's under this heading instead, that sort of thing. But they're essentially looking at, they're going to list what the official job title is that they're looking at, who the company or organization is, so their employer, where that job is located. That could be a state, it could be a city, town, it could also be remote, now that we are in the remote world of possibilities. So it could be a remote job, they can put remote there. The part that I've made a note of that tends to cause, again, that low scale panic is going to be the qualifications and education section, and then the job responsibilities and tasks. Those are often worded differently, job posting to job posting. So those are the 2 that students had a lot of questions about in my section last year, that I kind of had to walk around and say, oh, look, it's actually right here if you scroll a little bit, that sort of thing. And then lastly, the salary box here. Again, kind of another thing that we all know as working adults, that not all jobs post their salary or salary range. So this, students can leave blank if they can't find it. Some jobs do post it, so if it is posted on there, they can fill in the box. If not, they don't need to be all worked up and stressed about it, because it just might not be available for them to find.
But I will say too, to Jackie's point, like some of them, when you, in another reason to encourage you to maybe explore this on your own a little bit after you fill it out, they pathway you. Some of them, like what she was saying, are just walls of text of everything with like no spacing hardly. It's like somebody like copy and pasted and didn't think about it. And then some job postings are like labeled and have bullet points and are very clean. For some of the careers, if a student sees that they have like a plethora of job openings, so they can really like, because we're asking them to look up 3. If they've got like 15 listed and the first one they click on has terrible formatting, maybe you can even encourage them to say, well, maybe let's click through the others to see if one of them just looks better.
Yeah.
Because we really just want them to see what a job opening looks like, and them getting, like Jackie was saying, the like kind of like panic and anxiety is not what we want. We want them to see what's out there and effectively.
Yep. And I think under the qualifications in education, a common question that my students had last year was sometimes when employers list under that education section, it might just say a bachelor's degree. It might specify a degree. It might say a master's degree, whatever. So it might be a little bit of interpretive, again, help there with that specific question. But how they are going to get there. So for my Tuesday, Thursday sections, it'll be very easy because you're still working in that. Sorry, let me go to this pad, that want to learn more box. If you're on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you're doing this in separate days, you might have to direct them back to their career and then want to learn more box. And then once they are back in the learn more, under the job outlook box, they're going to click on find jobs. Then they can select the state that they are interested in. We'll do Indiana for funsies and click go. And this is where they can find a list of careers, or not careers, a list of job postings, to start looking at that information for their worksheet. And this is kind of what most of these will look. Obviously, the information is going to be listed differently, but it is going to pop up in this text box. So this is going to be another bit that might not be very friendly on the phone just because of all the pop-ups and whatnot. Not saying it's impossible, but it might just be difficult to navigate.
And that one looks good
Yeah, that one does look nice.
compared to some.
There we go. There's an all
Yeah.
text one.
And sure, it seems, you know,
Right. They're going to read every single word for word.
there's, you know, it's not.
Not a hyperlink.
And some of your students are gonna have a really niche job posting that maybe isn't exactly a match in Pathway U. That's okay too. Like sometimes it's more like it's a business degree, but it's something general, but they know since they were 5 years old, they want to be a Scrum Master or something like that, so like ultimately just like encourage them in this process because there's gonna be things that are a little bit different than exactly what the output
Oh, yeah.
is.
Yeah. And one thing I do always talk about with my students during this time is the like job title discrepancy. So I always give them an easy example of like, if you and your best friend in the future are doing exactly the same job, you have the same daily job tasks, same responsibilities, but you're working at two different companies, you might have two very different job titles. That's kind of a good little learning moment as well. I one time had a student a couple semesters ago who wanted to be a fashion designer. Guess what? Didn't have a lot of job posting, fashion designer. So I kind of had to help him navigate and find different things to look at there. So this one might be a little bit more hands-on on the instructor's behalf, just trying to find a job posting for them to look at. And then we get to our wrap up and we're almost done with the Max series. So this is looking towards the end of that proposed calendar, day 10 for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, day 7 for Tuesday, Thursday. I think there might have been a little bit of a mislabel on there, but it's the very last 2 days, I believe, for class. And this, we're just going to revisit and take the post test. So this is going to have them select where they think they fall now in terms of making a major or career decision. And then that additional question about the essential employability skills. And then just revisiting that My Career Journey presentation with them, reminding them if they haven't been working on it during class like you're telling them to not forget about it and put it off to the last minute, making sure that they're customizing it and just reminding them of the requirements for that presentation for your class individually.
And I'll say with the post test too, sometimes students they will get to the post test and they may have started out at 5 and then they are still a 5 by the end of the Max series. And they feel kind of like some sort of guilt, they're like, we just spent a month in career matches and I didn't match with anything. Or they may have started, like I said earlier, as a 1 and now they're a 4 and they have some sort of guilt. Please, if you remember to encourage them to be as honest as possible, because that's how we get data to then improve upon the Max series and then to also report it kind of out. Because if we see any big trend of wow, it's really cool that all these people are finding their major where we think where the Max series is good now, and we can improve in this area or that area. And so just encourage them to be very honest with it and encourage them to take it. Last year, when I was sifting through some of the post-test data, I think it was more of where we put it last year, and I think it's going to be easier just in general this year, but sometimes students don't take the post-test, which when I'm trying to like line up the data to then compare and contrast like between what they said before, what they say now, it's a little bit harder to get some good data from that. So just encourage them to take it, encourage them to be honest.
And, cause I've had a couple of students over the years that have started as a 5, ended as a 5, or maybe they start out, they think they're completely decided and they end up, well, wait, now maybe I'm more interested in some other options. Wherever they end up, all of that's perfectly fine. Just as you all will, be encouraging and that sort of thing, like Alex just said.
Yeah, we don't fail kids because they're a 5 or whatever. We're-
Yes, that's not a grade also, because
Yeah.
sometimes they get confused about that, a 1 through
Yeah.
5 for some reason, also not a grade or anything.
I think that they have to find something that's part of their final. It's like, no, just exploring and trying to figure it out is what we're trying to have to do. We're not trying to find one thing and have you sign the paper and now you're that major. Now you gotta go to all the classes. Yeah, forever. You can't ever change or
Set
something.
in stone. But yeah, that's kind of my general overview presentation. As always, if anybody has any questions or any issues that they come across, with the MAC series, please feel free to email me. Again, Jackie Adsinger or First Year Courses, whoever you need to reach out to kind of get you through. I think getting into this stuff, clicking in it, if you're not familiar with it, is really the most helpful because none of it's complicated. It's just knowing where to click at, really. Yeah, I think that's my full spiel.
For sure. Well, here's what we'll do for in-person people and online. I'm gonna stick around for a couple minutes just in case people have like lingering questions and people online just throw it in the chat and I can kind of get to it. Or if you want to stick around and just kind of like, if you had questions you didn't want to ask throughout and you want to ask Jackie or me right now, we can do that. Otherwise, I think you all have everything that we were handing out today. And yeah, you can head on out if you need to.
Bird.
Thank you. I should really work on this, the days there, I did that first. There's the. Let's see, yes, that's one. We'll do it before. They're all. Right.